As you probably noticed with that outline, this is one of those lessons I think a lot of times people fall into various categories with, and especially if you're married or you have young children and thinking, okay, I've already been through the process of dating, and I don't think I really need to listen much to this lesson. But let me tell you that either you will be dating, or you have been dating, or you have children that one of these days be dating, 20, 30 years from now, they decide they want to go out with somebody else. And not only that, but also you may have grandchildren during this process of dating. And it's important to understand what over in John 1st chapter, verse 30, 39, you may wonder, what does this passage have to do with the idea of dating? Well, simply from the point of view of what are we looking for? That's what Jesus is basically saying. What are you seeking? And because whatever it is we're looking for, most likely that will be what we find. That's what will be what we're going to get. And a lot of times you find couples that are having problems, and you ask, well, where did the process start? What was some of the mistakes they made or been making? And sometimes it's as simple as in the dating process. And that is that from the very beginning, they may have been looking for the wrong things. And so we want to talk about that this morning, son, from a point of view of mistakes, but also what we need to be looking for. And so first of all, it's important to keep in mind as far as dating to have a happy marriage, is the first thing is that sometimes people take it too seriously too quickly. And that is that you have somebody over here and they look nice and they seem to be acting really great, and you just kind of get what we often have the phrase puppy love. I remember in high school, the young ladies, young girls there with their books, they'd be drawing hearts and things like that, and they'd be putting their initials inside the heart and something like that. And of course, that'd be great for that week. But then next week could be somebody else, and the week after that would be somebody else. And that is that puppy love is what we often describe as you are enamored with the person, but for a short time period. Another phrase there, infatuation. Maybe another phrase we use there, and that person just can't get enough of them. You just can't be around them enough until maybe next week. And then also you don't care about that person much anymore. Or maybe the idea of what happens in dating sometimes is you become possessive, or the other person you're dating kind of starts looking at this as you are their possession. They want to maybe dominate your time or dominate whatever events you're going to. And you have to keep in mind that there's some drawbacks to all those things. And so that's another thing you have to be careful of. And some don't make the mistake of really not taking dating seriously enough. And that dating is the process by which we generally find our spouses. And so yes, eventually if you get married, there's going to be somebody you dated. And in some cultures not that way. In our culture it is. And so it may be a case of not taking seriously enough in the sense of they make mistakes, they kind of start doing bad habits because of the person they're with, and therefore they have trouble because of that. And as we look at this here, we just want to avoid those things. We want to make sure we're looking for the right things. And so to start off with here, as far as dating common mistakes, one is dating somebody that really doesn't have the right to be dating. There have been a few times I've been called into a conversation, and the person said, well, I started dating this person, I found out that this person is actually married, that they are already married. And as 1 Corinthians 7 verse 1 says, that certain things of which you wrote to me is good for a man, not just a woman, nevertheless, because sexual immorality, each man have his own wife, each man have his own woman, and let her have her own husband. And therefore what I'm saying is that when two people get married, see, they're bound together in the sight of God, and that excludes everybody else. Now what happens today in our society is that divorce has become so commonplace that a lot of times people don't even think about the fact that this young guy here, and it may be a young guy, or this young lady here, she may be just barely or 20, something like that, that you meet and start dating, they may already been married. And therefore they're already bound to somebody else. And so you have to just keep that in mind, is that I'm asking a question of, are you married? Because if they're not, or if they are married, then they don't have the right to be dating. And you don't have the right to be dating that other person either. And so be careful of that. And not only that, but also the person may say, well, I have a divorce. I have a divorce, yes, but you have to keep in mind again that why did they get a divorce? In Matthew 19, verse 9, you'll find, turn your Bibles there with me, in Matthew 19, verse 9, and we're not going to do a detailed study this morning about all the teaching on marriage, divorce, remarriage, but just notice in Matthew 19, and verse 9 there, it said Jesus had been asked a question. Early in this chapter, the rightful man divorced his wife for a reason. And so verse 9 he says, and I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. Whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. And therefore there are people that are going out there and getting married. They really don't have the right to get married, again, because they're already bound to somebody else. And so just make sure you understand, if that person is divorced, then why? And even in the case of, yes, they say, I fall in that category, Matthew 19, verse 9. My spouse cheated on me. My spouse is unfaithful to me. Let's keep this one point in mind. Yes, that person may have the right to get married. Now, I can't tell you don't ever date that person, but what I can say is you're going to have to deal with the third person, that divorced person, probably the rest of your life. Or at least while you have young children. And so number one is that they're dating somebody that really don't have a right to be dating. A second mistake is, that some people make, is getting serious about a boy or a girl. And they use that on purpose, that phrase for a girl, because you see, marriage is between a man and a woman, not between two children. And you may say, well, what's the difference between that? Is it just age? No, it's not just age. But the fact is, sometimes marriage is required maturity, and sometimes a boy, for instance, will blame somebody else for his mistakes. Or a young girl will do the same thing. But a man or a woman admits mistakes, they take responsibility for what they're doing. And so in that regard there, in Genesis 2, verse 24, in marriage, beginning of marriage, so therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh, and they were both naked, the man and his wife were not ashamed. Now notice again the idea of a man and a woman talked about here. And so when you start dating somebody, just realize that that person may not be ready to get married. That person is still immature. They got to grow up some more. And again, it's not the case of somebody of age by itself. But you have to be willing to take on the responsibility of the marriage. The third mistake some people make is that they date somebody that is either abusive or, as I said earlier, possessive. And that is that there's somebody that wants to dominate you. And that usually includes dominating your time, dominating your friends, dominating where you go. They're just dominating you. And what I would say is that if somebody is abusive, whether it's verbally or physically, and you may want to watch somebody, date somebody that's abusive, again, sometimes we get focused on that person and we refuse to see their bad qualities. And so that person there that is abusive to you, when you're dating, it's just going to be more abusive once you get married. They're going to be somebody that you cannot trust, or somebody's going to hurt you. A person that wants to possess you while you're dating is going to want to possess you after you get married. Over in Ephesians 5:28, so husbands ought to love their own wives, their own body, who loves the wife who loves himself. They understand that the idea of loving means sacrificial kind of love. It means love that wants to please the other person. It means love that cares about the other person. It's not the love that people often think about today, and that is, what are you going to give me? As long as you give me what I want, then I'll love you. But otherwise, forget about it. And so, dating somebody that is abusive. And then also, another one is, I guess keep this in mind, that abuse is not biblical grounds for divorce. What did I just get through reading Matthew 19, verse 9? It's set for sexual immorality. It's set for fornication. Some Bibles may translate that. And therefore, an abusive person, again, it's not grounds for divorce. Now, they may be a jerk. They may be somebody that you have to get away from in order to protect yourself and protect your children. But the fact is that we're just talking about the Bible teaches you. And that is Matthew 19:9 for that purpose of sexual morality. So that third one is somebody that is abusive. Now the fourth one is a drug user. A drug user. Or just somebody user. I was one time called in to a couple. They had moved into our area. They had been married for a number of years. They had some small children. And they were having troubles. And the wife explained her husband, when he was pretty young, a teenager, went on a worldwide tour, a kind of a teaching tour on a boat. And he got exposed to all kinds of drugs and all kinds of chemicals that put inside the body. And she started dating him, and they had children. But the problem was, see, he was still a user. He went back to the drugs after a number of years of being away from it. And a user is exactly that. That person will use whatever or whoever they can in order to get their drugs. There's all kinds of stories of people that are selling their children in order to get drugs. People that are willing to sell their own bodies to get their drugs. They'll lie to you, they'll cheat, if they have to in order to get their drugs. That becomes their God. And so this person over here is somebody that is using some kind of illegal drug, or maybe some drug like alcohol. That is very common today. Number one drug in our country is alcohol today. Or maybe some illegal drug that they're using. But just keep this in mind, that the user, again, will be doing exactly that, or will use you. In the Bible, in Galatians 5th chapter, we have the deeds of the flesh. And one of the things mentioned there is the word sorcery. And that word sorcery actually comes from the word that we get our word pharmacy from, pharmakia. And that means the use of chemicals or drugs to get hallucinations. And so that's part of the deeds of the flesh. They're using drugs so as to maybe escape reality or whatever they're trying to get. Another thing to keep in mind is that 21, he used drunkenness also. And so you have somebody you're dating, and they, again, are using. That you just need to be careful, because realize they'll use you if they come down between you and the drug. Oftentimes that's the choice they have to make. And so that's mistake number 4. Number 5 is, again, sexually involved. When I was in high school, the idea of two people dating generally meant they were holding hands. They may go out to the movies sometime together. They may go some other event together. Then we see hang around each other. Today, and you start talking to young people and asking about dating, it means something different. To men, though, it means automatically that they are involved in a sexual relationship with this other person. And if you're the world, that's the way to think about it. And that is, well, everybody does it anymore. Everybody is sexually active anymore. In fact, the suggestion that this young man is not sexually active, the suggestion that this young woman is not sexually active, after it makes you seem like a real strange person to the world around us. We need to teach our children, by the way, that what morality is, make sure that we're helping them to understand morality is defined by the Bible, not by society. But that getting sexually involved with another person. Over in 2 Samuel 13th chapter is an interesting passage there, because you have a son of David by the name Amar, and he had a half sister. Her name was Tamar. And Tamar was apparently a very beautiful young lady. And Ammon was focusing on her, and he was even kind of making himself sick, thinking about her, wanting her. Well, a friend actually suggested to Ammon, here's how you do. You get some time with her by yourself. Pretend like you're sick. Then have her make some use of food, bring it over to you, and then you can have your way with her. And that's kind of how it worked out. Tamar came to Ammon's house, and Ammon asked the servants, told him to get out of the bedroom. So he went to the bedroom, and then he forced himself on her. And in response to that, verse 14, it says, how you would not hear her voice. She'll say, don't do this. This is disgraceful what you're trying to do. And being stronger than he forced her away with her. Then Ammon, notice the last part, then Ammon hated her exceedingly. It just wasn't the case that he no longer cared about her, but actually the word hated. He hated her. So that he hated with which he hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Ammon said to her, arise and be gone. Did it bring them closer together? The answer to that is obviously not. But there are times that a person may look at you, and if you are a person of morality, and they understand you're a person that is trustworthy and faithful, they may think, well, that's the kind of person I want to marry. However, again, keep in mind, sexual activity outside of marriage is sin. And therefore, as you look through it, it's sinful. no matter how society talks about it. In Hebrews 13, verse 4, marriage honorable among all, the bed undefiled, but fornicators, adulterers, God will judge. That relationship is intended for the marriage bed, not for the dating bed. And therefore, just keep that in mind. And then also, another mistake sometimes, and just keep this in mind, is degrading. And then in 1 Corinthians 6, verse 18, it says, flee sexual morality. Every sin that man does outside of the body, but he who commits sexual morality sins against his own body. Or do you not know that your body is like the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, and you have from God, and you're not your own? You see, this is a sin that involves our very being, our very mind. It'll affect the way we think. It'll affect the way we act. It may affect your future in the sense of children. And therefore, it is a sin by which we degrade ourselves by committing it. Now, common mistake number 6 is one of basically of overlooking serious character flaws. And a lot of these are really part of that category, isn't it? And as you see that person, and you may think, well, that's okay. It may be sometimes kind of cute, the way he treats other people. But you look at a young man and just ask in Judges 14, verse 2, Samson. And Samson goes with dad. He went up and told his father and mother, saying, I've seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore give her for me as a wife. What's he doing? He's looking just at how pretty that young lady was. And as you go on here, we find the father trying to explain it to him. It said, his father and mother said to him, is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said, his father, get her for me, for she pleased me well. You see, now I think there's an important point here, is that once your children start getting that starry-eyed look, once they think they have found the one, reasoning becomes very hard. If you want to teach your children, teach them before they get to that dating age. Try to talk to them before that point in time. Because once they get those stars in their eyes, and once they start drawing the hearts and their names back, a lot of times you're too late. They're not to listen. And so you look at these character flaws, just kind of keep that in mind, that person, that flaw that may seem to be at times enduring, gets very old very quickly. And there's some other things we talk about as far as the blaming other people for your bad choices, or dating somebody to rebel against your parents. All that's seen in the Bible. So what do we need to be looking for? Well, the first thing I would say is a person you want your children to be like. Can you imagine what kind of a father he will be? What kind of a mother she will be? And as you do that, just realize that in Ephesians 16, verse 44, it says, indeed, everyone who quotes Proverbs or uses Proverbs against you, like mother, like daughter. We have to say that in a sense like father, like son. And he goes on, verse 45 says, you are your mother's daughter, loathing husband, children, and you are your sister, who loathed their husband and children. Your mother was a Hittite, your father Amorite. You did not walk in their ways, nor act according to their abomination, but as if that were too little, you became more corrupt than they in all your ways. I realize that passage is specifically applies spiritually between Judah and the nations around them, the idols around them. But also this applies in the sense of the person that we're dating. We need to look at somebody and think about, if they act like their mother, if they act like their dad, and we often kind of joke about that, don't we? Kind of say, you know, that child, that's the father's child right there. I don't want to claim him right now. But how are they going to be as a parent? Think about that, son. A second thing is a Christian. I probably should have had one too here reversed. Both were Christian. And by Christian, I don't just mean somebody that is going to church. On many occasions, again, I have been called into a situation where they married a Christian, but that person really was interested in serving Christ. That person, yes, they went to church, but there's some things about them that just wasn't according to the Bible. So as you think about this, as far as, are they really trying to serve God? Are they really wanting to go to heaven? Do they really want me to go ahead? Can I see them being a Christian in our marriage that's going to help us all go to heaven? And therefore, how are they doing as far, are they working in the kingdom? Are they willing to do things, teach class, or lead sing, or go visit the orphans and widows in their affliction? Are they willing to do that? Are they willing to be a deacon, a servant of the church, or doing things that needs to be done for the congregation? Are they willing to be an elder? Can I see this person striving and looking at the qualifications of the elder in 1 Timothy 3rd chapter? Can I see that person looking at that and think that that's the pathway they're on? How about as far as a teacher? They may ask a preacher, but can I see that person striving to do these things? If that person is wanting to go to heaven, then that's what you want. Somebody that really wants to go to heaven and want to do these things. A third thing to look for is somebody who recognizes their responsibilities. Now, I said earlier, the difference between a boy and a girl is that a child often will blame other people for their mistakes. I would have been there all the time, but, and then they have an excuse. But you want somebody that says, when I make a mistake, you know what? I'm sorry. I should have done better than that. I want to recognize what they've done wrong. And so you look at that in 1 Timothy 5 verse 8. And that basically says, but if anyone does not provide for his own, especially those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Is he going to be willing to provide for you, for the children? Can you see him working so as to help you maturely make ends meet? Or maybe from the point of view of the young woman. Times 2:4, talking about the old women, but they must, young women, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their own husbands. But the word of God may not be blasphemed. You look at these qualifications here, or these things being talked about. And these are things that are not just instinctual. To love your children requires some learning, also requires some sacrifice to be made, to be a homemaker, be chaste. All these things are qualities that you want your children bond to have. And we can also apply this from the point of view of the man. Is he willing to be the example to your children that children should have as far as a godly husband, godly father? That's what we need to be looking at. And number 4 is how they treat other people. How are they about treating other people? And how are they about treating their mom? You know, I'm talking about from a point of view of a young lady who's dating this guy here. How does he treat his mom? Because until he gets married, his mom is the most important person in his life. That's the person that brought him up. That's the person that has fed him. That's the person that takes care of him. That's the most important person in his life. How does he treat his mom? How does she treat her dad, her father? Because, again, the same thing goes for the young lady, and that's the most important man in her life until they get married is the dad. How do they treat him? And maybe also learn that, but also the friends. How do they treat their friends? These are all things to keep in mind. Because, again, as you look at this, there are certain things we may think, well, that's not a big deal. But if you're living with this 24/7, that becomes a big deal. How are they treating other people? And then number 5 is, that's my list here, modesty. And may say, oh, what? Well, modesty means orderly arrangement, shamefacedness, decency, discreetness. And usually we think about this in clothing, and it can be applied in clothing, but also in attitude. About how modest of an attitude they have, and how are they around other people. There are certain things that only you get to see in your marriage. Nobody else has right to see that. And if you have somebody that is doing that, then you're going to have issues inside your marriage. And the same thing applies to you men. It's not just a woman issue here. A young guy says sometimes without the shirts on and how they're dressing in public, about how does that come out? Are they modest in their life? And titled 1 Timothy 2 verse 9, that the women adorn themselves in modest apparel with pride and veneration. There have been 3 times in our marriage where Regina say something to me like, what I think about, I don't know, this dress or some other thing like that. And we used to say this a lot more when we first got married, but there are times I was telling her, I said, well, that'd be fine if you wear that as long as you're inside the house. As long as you're inside the house, it's okay. But you say, I don't want everybody else being seen what I can see. And the same way applies to the woman to the man. So let's somebody that is modest. And then number 6 is leadership. And that is, the Bible talks about that in 1 Corinthians 11 verse 3. He said, I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ, head, a woman is man, the head of Christ is God. Where's his leadership? Inside the home. Again, this personal experiences of the older couple, actually, the woman was talking about her husband, and she knew that other Christians said, well, she runs that household. And that's true. That's what people say about her. She runs the household. And one day we got talking, she said, I know what they said about me. She said, let me tell you what happened. We got married, and I sat back and I waited for him to show some leadership. Made decisions for us as a family. And he said he never did. And eventually that was cast upon her. That she kind of took over that role. And so when you think about leadership, is he willing to provide? Can you see him being a leader of your home? Can you see her being the one taking care of children or bringing their children up in their family to the Lord? Their leadership is important. And submission goes along with it. In Ephesians 5:22. And that is, a submission is voluntary. You can't make somebody yield to you. You can't make somebody submit to you. That comes from them. If she's going to be willing to submit, if she's going to be willing to submit to the woman as far as her needs and take care of the children also. So these are some things to keep in mind as far as what we look for in our spouse. Because again, you're going to find what you're looking for. And so you need to make sure that you look for the right thing. Because whenever we make a promise, in our marriage, whenever we say, do you take this person better or worse, sicker or poor, and health, and all those kind of different situations that are described, those things are not happening. And we say yes to that. And therefore, as Matthew 19:6 says, well, then they're no longer two but one flesh. Therefore, God's joined together, let it not be separated. You see, your job in your marriage is to keep God first, and then work so as to make that marriage successful. And nobody else is going to do that for you except you. You have to recognize your responsibility. Well, I appreciate your kind attention. I know this kind of shotgun approach to this, a lot of different ideas, but I'm hoping that maybe, again, as parents, you kind of keep the outline and maybe talk to your children some about that, especially when they get to start dating, and just kind of remind them about what the Bible teaches about these things. But when Jesus asked the question, what are you looking for? Back there in John, 1st chapter, 30, 39. You see, some people are looking for salvation. Others weren't concerned about it at all. Are you looking for salvation? Are you looking for heaven? Again, some people don't care about that at all. Even in the time of Jesus, there was some that really wasn't trying to please God. But are you looking for heaven? Are you looking for a time of eternity with God, where you can go and be with Him forever and ever and ever? Are you looking for hope in this life here? Something better that we have ahead of us. Are you looking for that? Well, if you look for those things right there, then only can you find those in Jesus. Only in Him do we have those things available to us. And if we make sure that we're looking at Him as we live our lives. I appreciate your kind attention this morning. Hopefully, as I said, the issue again is maybe it's parenting or as you start dating, because you want to be happy. I don't know anybody yet that has ever gotten to marriage thinking, you know what, it's going to make me miserable, that's okay. I'm all right with it. No, we usually get married because we think that's going to be a great relationship. And it will be. If you do what God says. If you put Him first. And your think so second. It will be if you're trying to take responsibility and realize that I need to do what the Bible says about me, and let the other person do what the Bible says to them. Fulfill their responsibilities. So this morning we have our invitation song ready. We invite you, if you're not a Christian, to examine Jesus, to see what His Word says. We help in your studies, so let us know. If anybody here this morning understands what needs to be done to become a child of God or baptized, have your sins washed away by His blood, then I want you to listen to us and stand as we sing.